Okay. As usual, I have a new what am I going to call this? Jingle
Okay.
for
All right.
our intro. So, I'm thinking cars. Boom boom. Or maybe it's kicks. Boom boom. We don't know what it is, but we know that it's cars and kicks. So there you go. There you go.
I can get behind that.
Okay, it just kind of just comes out of me sometimes, guys. It just comes out, and I just get so it's just.
It was a little Broadway musical meets like jazz meets like noir. Like, dude, that was deep.
It's like a spiritual experience for me, honestly. It just kind of
saw your spirit floating.
Did you? Did you?
I did.
Yeah, it was like I wasn't here. It was just like my singing voice was just like it's my time now, and just came out. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, as always, folks, welcome to the Cars and Kicks podcast. I am Jacques Slade. I do this show with two people who know a lot more than me. I'm really just here for because they needed a cute face and a great singing voice. So that's the only reason I'm here. But I'll let the other two guys introduce themselves.
Go ahead, Nick. I'm still simmering, with that beautiful, magical
that intro. I get it.
My name's Nick Engvall. I am one of the guys here talking about cars and kicks. I mean, I kind of straddle both sides of this world that we're trying to combine with this show, and we got an awesome episode today to talk about some serious news. Yeah. But Eric, tell them about yourself.
Yeah, my name is Eric Valdez, and I'm here. I'm kind of like the resident car expert here. Jacques is like Mr. Sneaker, knows pretty much everything. Nick actually knows a ton about sneakers and quite a bit about cars, so he's probably the more well-rounded version of he's like the two of us combined. That's his superpower. So yeah, we're well, the three of us combined create Cars and Kicks.
Cars and Kicks. So welcome to the show, everyone. So this week, some news came out. If you're listening to this later down the line, this week is July 2024, July 16th, 2024. Nike filed a suit against a customizer that is pretty big in our community. His name is Shoe Surgeon, also known as Dominic Chambroni, which is his actual real name, for $60 million. And the suit alleges that Dom and his partner Dallas created a quote unquote counterfeit Nike empire, which is a very interesting way to phrase things. We've all had privy to the suit. We'll link to it in the show notes if you want to find out more, if you want to read the suit yourself. But it's very interesting. One, there's a lot of lawyer shade thrown throughout the document, which is just kind of what lawyers do in these suits. It's like very lawyer speak, but they're like super throwing shade at everything, which is very funny to me all the time when you see stuff like this. But this came as a complete shock to the sneaker community. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's not a complete shock to the sneaker community because people have been wondering if it was going to happen. In the past, just to give you guys a little context, Nike has sued a bunch of customizers and I would say counterfeit sneaker makers in like the traditional sense of the word counterfeit. And we were always wondering if Dom or Shoe Surgeon if they were going to be on that list as well. And, from my perspective, they do things a little differently. And we're going to get into that a lot with Eric and Nick because they have some insight into the car world, because that's kind of how I saw what Dom was doing. But Nike obviously saw that in a totally different way. So I guess I'll just kick it off. Let's just get really your opinions between you two. Like, what do you guys think about this suit? And I guess really, do you think it's justified from Nike?
Man, I got some strong opinions here. You mind if I jump in?
Yes, please.
Go for it. Yep.
So look, going to use the language that you were mentioning, well, you're just using the lawyer's language, et cetera, but to call Dom in Dallas and the Shoe Surgeon operation counterfeit is a massive stretch, in my opinion. I mean, look, both worlds that we're talking about here, cars and kicks, are the whole reason that we started this is because those are forms of self-expression, right? They go beyond function. It's not just the vehicle that gets you from here to there, or the things you throw on your feet to, protect them while you're walking through the desert or whatever. It's a form of expression. And the shoe surgeon, not once, I've followed their stuff for a long time. I'm a big fan. Not once were they pitching their shoes as, Nike products. Yes, they're taking that silhouette, they're taking those, that sole, that midsole, that whatever, and they're Frankensteining, for lack of a better term, what their creative vision is, or what their client's creative vision is, and they're bringing it to reality. I think that's art, in my opinion. That's not a counterfeiting, operation. Yeah, you've got, in the past, some of these suits were legit. When you've got people who are making, 99% replicas of factory sneakers, or sneaking the same sneaker out of the factories and selling it on the open market as a replica, a Nike replica, same badging, same everything, same logos, that's a different story, because you're not trying to change anything to make it different. You're just trying to profit off of somebody else's hard work and design. So those are justified. In this case, I completely think it's a bunch of BS. And I don't know, in a weird way, the way the world works these days, I feel like it might just be a publicity stunt. And I feel like at some point, this will get settled, and for an undisclosed amount, which will probably be next to nothing, and both parties will come out with a little bit more buzz behind them. That's my take.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. I think that it's a complete, it's just ridiculous, in my opinion. I get that Nike has to protect their IP and do what they have to do from a lawyer perspective. But I think that the best way to put it, I've seen many people say this, and I've even said it over the last couple of years, it feels, if you've paid attention to the news, and to add some context to where this kind of comes from the Nike side, Nike's seen like their biggest fall off in the history of the company in the last couple of months. And I would argue that that's been about an 18-month period where it's been rough for Nike for what it's not been rough for Nike in terms of business, but it's been rough for what Nike expects from their own business. And I think that is probably the context that you need to take with this. And, a lot of people have said, when Nike sees numbers go down, they start suing people. And, the other piece to this is that people really need to know, if you're not familiar with Dom and the shoe surgeons,
say it 3 times fast.
Business, right? Yeah, lost it there. If you're not familiar with his work, Frankensteining is the best word, but this is like next level luxurious Frankensteining. And he's done this with Nike. Nike has hired him many times to create products for him.
That's the crazy part about this. Yeah.
And beyond that, he has partnerships with Gucci, and I can't even remember all of them, but it's countless, right? Like I would say that if you're our age or older, you probably know who Dapper Dan is. He used to create, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, all the luxury brand custom Air Force Ones and leather jackets. He is probably the closest person that I could think of to kind of say that Dom is like this generation's Dapper Dan. Like he's just taken it next level, and he does things that are incredible and incredibly outside the norm for what goes on to a pair of sneakers. Right. And he does so much more than sneakers, but he also has a studio that I think Jacques has seen that probably can talk a little bit more to. But the last point I'll make about the Dapper Dan connection is Dapper Dan is this, creative dude from Harlem that essentially was like, I'm going to make my own, Air Force Ones customized out of Gucci materials. Yeah. And he did that for decades. And in the last handful of years, I don't know when it was, last 4 or 5 years, he actually came back around and did a collaboration directly with Gucci and was celebrated for what he contributed to the culture. Yeah. And I think, to Eric's point, we probably will see this fall out to something where we don't know the numbers. And if Nike's not celebrating what Dom has done over the last few years, I hope that every brand on the planet says, here's a bag, go do what you do and make the cool shit that you make. And let's celebrate what you've done, because he's bringing people into the footwear industry to create footwear in ways that we cannot fathom. And no school or no brand is going to be able to do on their own. And that's the most frustrating part for me. I get a little amped up about it because I'm like, yo, you're ruining this funnel of creativity and passion that is lacking in the sneaker world on the brand side right now.
I mean, not to be cliche about it, but Nike, in my opinion, is like shooting themselves in the foot here. And the reason behind that is like, look, your average kid off, a high school kid, junior high kid off the streets, whatever, cannot afford a $10,000 pair of Python Jordan 1s, right? But if Dom does something that catches these kids' eyes and some athlete or some artist or some, actor or rapper or whatever is wearing them, and that brings these kids deeper into the sneaker culture, and they're like, okay, I can't get a pair of the black and yellow Python Wu-Tang 1s, but Nike's releasing a black and yellow pair of 1s next week, and I can get those for $190, whatever the case may be. Seems to me like Nike might be benefiting off of Dom in a weird, twisted way, and that's where I have an issue with this, and why I think the bulk of this is probably a publicity stunt to your point, Nick, to kind of help get them out of whatever this rut is that they're in, and it's just a shame that it has to go down this way.
Yeah. One last point before I give it to you, Jacques. Nike partnered with the shoe surgeon to create the custom shoes that were given to LeBron for his record-breaking points moment,
Wow.
2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, that is the pinnacle of your pinnacle athlete that you chose to partner with Dom and Surgeon Industries, whatever his business is called, to celebrate this moment together just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Like, that is like how high level the partnership is, like that's not an easy task to get done behind the scenes at Nike. So
yeah.
I think there's a huge disconnect between the legal team and the creative teams at Nike.
Yeah. So I had a chance to talk with a representative from Nike yesterday a little bit about this. And first, I just want to read the statement that they put out. Our goal is to make sure consumers are not misled and have access to authentic Nike Inc. products that are authorized and created according to our high standards with the performance benefits they expect. It is unfortunate that after many attempts to resolve this matter privately, we've had to take legal action against the shoe surgeon for counterfeiting, mass customization, and trademark infringement. In order to safeguard our brand and IP and align with Nike's commitment to protect consumers from counterfeit Nike products, we are left with no choice but to seek a legal solution to address how the shoe surgeon is constructing counterfeit Nike footwear from scratch and selling it as officially branded product. Further, the shoe surgeon is teaching others to create counterfeit Nike sneakers. These activities are illegal and deceive consumers and create confusion in the marketplace around source, authenticity, and quality of Nike products. We value our relationship with Shoe Surgeon and do not have any issue with the limited one-of-one customizations he's been doing for us or his clients when allowed under Nike-sponsored athletes' contracts. In fact, we value opportunities for our athletes, consumers, and partners to express themselves through their own style and creativity. There's a couple of things in there that hop out, that just really pop out to me. One is Shoe Surgeon is constructing counterfeit Nike footwear from scratch and selling it as officially branded product, teaching others to create Nike sneakers. And then after all of that, we value our relationship and do not have any issues with his limited one-of-one customizations he's been doing for us or his clients when allowed under Nike-sponsored athlete contracts. We value our athletes, consumers, and partners to express themselves through their own style and creativity. So,
unpack that for us, Jacques.
Yeah. So the thing that sticks out to me is creating counterfeit Nike sneakers. Now, from my personal experience with Dom and the shoe surgeon, or Dom, aka Suso, I'm just going to call him Dom for the rest of this episode, so we're not going back and forth. Is, I guess, I'm trying to think the definition of counterfeit sneakers. When I think of counterfeit sneakers, I think of sneakers that are like you've seen some of the Instagram people where they make sneakers and instead of a Nike swoosh, they have a lightning bolt or they have a flower or whatever it is. They just make a Jordan 1, but then they paste on whatever it is, but none of it's Nike products, so to speak. With Dom, everything is sourced from a Nike shoe. So he starts with a Nike shoe. He deconstructs the Nike shoe, keeps the sole of the Nike shoe, and then rebuilds it with the materials that either the person uses or whatever it is that they've imagined the shoes should look like. So it's, to me, that isn't a counterfeit sneaker, and maybe legally it is. But that's and I take issue with that there, just because I know he's using a Nike product. He bought a Nike product, and they just reconstructed it, which I believe we are allowed to do as consumers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Dom, on his website, it specifically says, we are selling you a service. We're not selling you a shoe.
Right.
We're selling you a service to do this. And a sourcing fee is included in the fee for the shoes, for them to source the shoes. So I feel like if things are as I understand them, I don't know how far Nike is going to be able to go with that counterfeit Nike sneakers and selling them as Nike sneakers. The other thing is teaching people how to make Nike sneakers. Again, the same process happening. I took one of Dom's classes, and they specifically ask you for your size before you go to the class. And when you show up to the class, you have the Nike shoe on your desk, and they teach you how to take the shoe apart and how to rebuild the shoe to make your own version of that shoe. So again, the words making it from scratch, I guess technically, you are rebuilding it from scratch in a sense, but you're not making a shoe from scratch. You're not making the outsole. The technology is still there. The Zoom airbag or the or the airbag is still there. So it just, I think they're being very they're playing with words in a way. I think, and again, this is what I was speaking to earlier of the shade kind of from the lawyer side, where they try to get it in. Now, this makes me think of, I don't know, I'm limited in my car world experience, but when like this first popped up, I text Nick right away and was like, yo, what's the name of the company that makes the Porsches? And he was like, oh, Singer. And I was like, yeah, like, I feel like that's the same thing that Dom's doing, like Singer. Mm-hmm. And so for our audience that's listening that don't necessarily know what Singer is, either Nick or Eric, can you guys really like describe what Singer is? And Eric, you mentioned like Singer's been going through some issues as well. Yeah, like maybe you can speak to those as well.
They got sued by Porsche relatively recently, and so it was a similar situation. They've since settled as of a couple of months ago, and undisclosed terms, etc. But I was lucky enough to spend quite a bit of time with the guys at Singer a few years ago when I used to live back in LA. There was a point in time where I was going to help with their not really R&D, but more like QC. Like when a car was built, they had like, I think Marino Franchitti and Chris Harris and a couple of other guys that were taking the, not really prototypes, but the cars that were finished and going out and road testing them and being like, hey, let's tweak this, let's do that. And there was a point in time where I was going to get to be involved in some of that just due to my past racing history and everything that. Never came to be, unfortunately, but I get to see their facility. I got to see their process. I got to see what they were doing, and it is extremely similar to what Dom is doing. And here's where I take issue with all the lawyer semantics and stuff that you just mentioned. The shoe in this case is purchased, right? Either Dom and the shoe surgeon purchase it, or somebody brings their shoe to him. So at that point, it's Nike's gotten their piece of it. Right? They don't market a sneaker to then be sold and resold and resold and profit off of that every time it gets changed or modified. That's not the business model. So once they've made their profit on the sneaker itself, how are they going to control who does what to it? If Dom was selling it as a shoe surgeon X Nike product every single time, then I can understand where you're starting to infringe on their IP and leverage their name and all these other things. But that's not the case. It's a modification service. That is what Singer was doing with Porsche. Yes, they had to. There will be something that Dom, the shoe surgeon group, have to do, maybe verbally or with the writing on their website or whatever, to just change things, which really will not make a difference to 99% of people. It's just the legal stuff. Singer had to start putting reimagined on the back of their 911. It couldn't have a Porsche badge. It would be reimagined by Singer, right? That had to be the thing, because technically Porsche didn't want people, which I don't know how they would confuse it, thinking that, oh, that's a Porsche, and then go to a Porsche dealership and be like, hey, can I get one of these, and show a picture? Like, you'd have to be really ignorant to do that. And either way, At that point, Porsche could be like, well, we can't do that, but we can sell you the car to then go do that with, right? Because that's what Singer was doing, is taking donor cars, Porsches that had already been sold years and years ago. They were using 964s primarily. I think they're doing some 993 stuff now, but they were using, 25-year-old, 30-year-old almost at this point, Porsches that had long been sold, and Porsche had make their money off of that, and however much money they made over service over the years. And so it's just an old car that's being reimagined at this point. And to kind of stifle the creativity of people like that, or Dom, or, it's almost like these big corporations feel like if it doesn't immediately benefit them, like they said in the statement, they're happy to work with Dom on official projects, and all these other things. Cool, but you're going to stifle every other creativity. I mean, or bit of creativity. It really rubs me the wrong way, if you can't tell, because I'm rambling a bit. But yeah, I mean, Nick, you chime in on that part of it, because both the sneaker and the car world pretty well.
I mean, I think it's like that old proverb, what is it? Give a man a fish and he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish and he gets sued by a big corporation. That's like the new American way or something.
That's exactly how that quote goes. You're right.
That's
yeah.
funny.
I mean, it's just crazy to me, like just thinking about both sides of this, right? Because again, like the partnership between Nike and Dom is so high level that it just looks like you're being petty for every consumer that follows Dom. Million plus, probably. I don't know what his social following is, but he's very successful. Everyone's going to think, well, why is Nike being jerks about this? Like, that's the first thought that they're going to have. They're not going to think, oh yeah, Dom's been selling fakes, right? To Jacques' point, we've all seen what happens. And to your point, Eric, about like changing things on the website. I was looking at his website yesterday, and it says
right,
every shoe that he redoes is, you're paying for a commission, right? You're paying for the service. I don't see how that, I mean, it will be wild to me if this lawsuit doesn't just get like minimized to almost nothing, like you said. But I think the other thing, like on the car side with the Porsche stuff, what stops Singer from building an entire car and just leaving a place for a badge? People know what a Porsche is, but like if you want a Porsche badge on it, then okay, cool. They're going to do it anyway. And I think that's such a weird, it's not surprising that lawsuit also kind of fizzled out in whatever way that it did. Because, Singer has, I would say Singer and Gunther Works and a handful of others have really kind of like brought new energy for a different type of customer to the Porsche brand. Like Porsche is obviously a very high level brand, but it's a purist brand first and foremost. And I think that Singer, as much as I do still believe that they are purists behind the scenes and like have, like do things for the love of it, I think that just by nature of the level of detail that they go into on their builds, they're selling to people that are definitely not purists. They're selling to people that just have a boatload of money. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like they make beautiful cars, but that's also exactly what Dom does. I have 1,000, 1,500 pairs of sneakers,
right, and
I've never spent more than like $400 or $500 on a pair of shoes.
Yeah.
I love some of the stuff that Dom does. Would I buy a pair? Probably not. Like if I was there in person and I got to sit with him and talk with him and interview him. I mean, I know he's from NorCal, so he's probably a Giants fan originally. So like, like there might be a connection. And like, next thing you know, I've got like a beautiful black and orange Air Jordan 1, right? Snakeskin croc, all that. But I digress. I think it's so hard to understand the corporate approach, and which is the thing that I texted Jacques yesterday when we spoke about it a little bit. For me, being on the marketing side and creative sides of all these companies that I've worked for over the past, 18 years in sneakers, it's probably more likely that the legal team did not talk to anybody on the creative side of things until this had already started, wheels in motion type of situation. Like I've been with companies that are, maybe not as big as Nike, but like massive companies, and also with startups. And there's never real connection between those two teams. The legal team is tasked with keeping the brand protected. The creative team is tasked with finding the coolest people on the planet and working with them and doing the cool shit that inspires people to be a part of the brand. Those two things run in completely different lanes 99.9% of the time. And I think that's probably where this all stems from. And hopefully it, gets to a point where, Dom can just move on with things and, get back to doing what he does, because it's inspiring.
Okay, yeah. I'm going to throw a little wrinkle in here. So I noticed on the Singer website, they have a statement that says Singer is not sponsored, associated, approved, endorsed, nor in any way affiliated with Porsche Cars North America Inc. or DRINGHCF Porsche AG DR blah 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 blah. Porsche is the owner of numerous trademarks, both registered and unregistered, including without limitation the Porsche crest, Porsche and the model numbers and names in the distinctive shape of the Porsche automobile, such as the federally registered 911 automobile. Any mention of Porsche Cars North America Inc. or DRINHCF Porsche AG trademark names or other marks is for purpose of reference only. Does Singer do these cars in multiples, or are they all one-offs?
They're complete. It's very much like Dom does. They are completely customized commissions. That's what they call them. They don't even say, like, early on, and I don't know if they're still doing this, but early on, you would get, like, one was called the Phoenix commission because it was going to a client in Phoenix. One was called the, whatever commission, whatever, like, nickname they gave it. And that's before they were doing bigger volume. They're still a very low volume, high quality, high production value company. But that's what they used to call them. It was never like, oh, this is the Porsche 964 that we did this and this and this too. No, it was a Singer Montana commission, a Singer Phoenix commission. They never presented it as though it was a Porsche product. Everybody knew that that's what they were starting with, but I think that's what's going to ultimately come out of this is language on a website like you just read that's going to have to go on the front splash page of the shoe surgeon, and everybody will kind of be okay at that point. And the interesting thing is too, like with Singer, kind of like you mentioned with Dom doing official collabs and stuff, Porsche, the Team Jota commissioned Singer to do their livery for their Le Mans Porsche 963 in conjunction with Tom Brady, of all people. Like we live in a world where big names and big creativity all come together with big corporations to create the cool. That's what it is. It's marketing 101, And if you're going to start stifling people for changing up something that maybe you should have thought of internally a long time ago, like why, if Nike's so, and don't get me wrong, I love Nike. I'm really bashing them here a little bit. it's a point of contention with me. It's my favorite shoe company and always has been. But if you really wanted to go after whatever market Dom and them are cornering, then have a bespoke Nike collection and have a service where you can go to Nike directly and have them commission something for you. Porsche did kind of take a little bit of that out of a playbook. And I don't know if it was officially inspired by Singer and Gunther Works and all these other, successful kind of modifiers per se. But, Porsche now offers a full-on restoration program officially licensed through Porsche. So let's say you've got a retro 964 and your options are, I want to modify it heavily. I'm going to send it to Singer, or I've got a 993. I'm going to send it to Gunther Works, or I've got a 356. I'm going to have, just Rod Emery go do this beautiful 356. He's another amazing, artisan, for lack of a better term. Or you can go to Porsche and have them nut and bolt restore the car completely original to how it was 30 years ago. And then you have an official licensed Porsche product. So it really is up to the consumer. Like, what is your flavor, right? And so if Nike wants to offer something like that, go ahead. Why not? It's not, nobody's stopping them from doing that, but why stifle other people's creativity for anything other than a headline, really?
Interesting. So when on my call with Nike yesterday, one of the things that was mentioned is that the biggest issue that they have with Dom is the multiples.
Okay.
So Dom will do a customization and make more than one, according to the suit. He'll make more than one and sell those on his website. And that seems to be where the mass counterfeit statement is coming from. which is an interesting sort of wrinkle in the conversation. But at the same time, it's, even if it is mass, quote unquote.
Yeah, what is the legal number for mass?
I guess
5 pairs, 10 pairs?
Yeah, maybe 5.
Yeah.
I assume 5 means mass at a minimum. They're still made from sourced Nike product. So whether he's selling 10,000 of them or he's selling 2 of them, they've already bought the Nike product and they just made it to look like a different shoe.
Right.
It's almost like if Singer bought 100 Porsches and we're going to do like the Singer collection of these modified Porsches, is that allowed? I guess I guess that's the bigger question is does that make things more difficult?
Nick is chomping at the bit. Go,
yeah,
buddy.
I mean, I think this is just like a very nitpicky, nuanced situation, right? Like, we're talking a lot about Singers, but on the other side of the Porsche world, you have RWB, like Raoul Begriff, is like a company that makes these beautiful, insane, wide body Porsches. It's one guy that builds them. And to Eric's point about the naming for the early Singers, they build them, or he builds them, I should say, and it's named after where it came from or the color. He chooses the name for the car when it's finished. Mm-hmm. And I think that if you were a customer that wanted if Eric had just bought a Singer or an RWB and I wanted the same car, I could tell him I want the exact same car. Mm-hmm. And like, he'll probably do something slightly different. Singer would probably do something slightly different. And like, they would call it something different, but basically you're seeing what you can get. Mm-hmm. And it's almost as if like the distinguishing factor between what Dom does, to your point, is like, what is mass? 5. So if he does 5 of the same shoes and offers it in different sizes, then he's problematic. But if he does 1 shoe every day for the same person and only puts up 1 shoe every day, does that make it okay? Like, it just seems so ridiculous to like put people through these types of situations. But Eric made a good point about like the energy and that like people want to get involved with these situations from a marketing side because it creates tons of buzz. When I was at StockX a handful of years back, we were able to work with Nike directly as a resale platform, which at the time was not very, this is the height of the Yeezy craze. This is the height of resale becoming a very mainstream thing. I still question what StockX brought to the market. Being a part of that from such an early stage, employee number 9, and also working as a contractor before that, it's kind of like, okay, this is going to create a platform that absolutely makes it easier for people to get into the buying and selling of sneakers, because there wasn't a great place to do that. If you went to eBay at that time, I don't think many people trusted their authentication process. So, there is a lot of gray area there.
Yeah.
But we got so much traction out of the gate building that platform, and we got so much, respect from within the community of existing resellers. Like, this is something that's always going to happen. It's never going to go away. That Nike basically was like, somehow we were able to work out a deal where we created these like cool boxes out of the court from the championship year for the Cavaliers. There was 23 pairs. We got 23 pairs of the Air Zoom generation, the very first time a LeBron had retroed, 2017. Mm-hmm. Amazing. Like a truly bucket list opportunity for someone like myself that's worked in the sneaker business for so long. They also gave us 23 pairs of the, new LeBron that came out at that time. And we packaged them up in these like beautiful, some people, we did auctions, like we basically donated to charity. We created these like essentially like one of one replica rings, so you could get a championship ring if you bought the package.
Well,
I still have it. It's one of the things that I absolutely treasure, because you can buy like a replica ring that is like $50 off of eBay, but these are like as close to the player edition rings as you can get without spending thousands of dollars.
Right.
Like I don't know what the cost of these were because I wasn't a part of that part of this project, but it created so much buzz. We got Kevin Nagandi to talk about it on ESPN. We got the New York Times to do a story on it, front page, like subtext on the front page, but like a big, open fold, like it was a massive deal for the sneaker community. And to be a part of that and still like feel like you're kind of an outsider with Nike is very telling as to like the way a lot of these big corporations use people for their energy and then kind of push them aside, and I don't want to roll anybody under the bus, but I know that you guys have been in situations where it's like, wow, that's kind of crazy. I would not expect to have gotten such a hard no on asking for such a simple introduction, connection, press release, whatever it is. It happens all the time.
Yep.
I think the other side of this that we should talk to, and maybe Eric, you can talk to this, but like that influencer creative energy is so desirable, but some companies like Ferrari, for instance, will go after these guys that do anything with their cars and basically try to shut down everything they do, which is even more insane to me than this lawsuit. But we should talk about it because I think it's relevant here.
I mean, I think, and it happens a lot and has happened for a while. The ones that come to mind are like the blacklisted celebrities, influencers, et cetera, from Ferrari, and like Justin Bieber was blacklisted because he had a 458, at West Side, whatever it is, the West Coast Customs, and they did like a wide body with a matte blue wrap and all sorts of stuff. And Ferrari felt that was too far of a departure from their particular vehicle, and so they asked him not to do it. He had to convert it back, take the wrap off, convert it back to somewhat stock-ish or whatever. McLaren did it with Deadmau5. He had that was Ferrari as well. He called it the Ferrari instead of the Ferrari because it had this crazy like digital cat thing wrapped on it, and they sent a cease and desist. And it's Ferrari is a great example of that because they are probably more protective about their brand than any other company in the world. And I think a big part of that is not just because they're a car company, they're a bigger lifestyle company. Ferrari globally is known for their cars, and they make amazing cars. In my opinion, I named my son after their founder, Enzo. But they're a massive lifestyle brand, which is, a whole other tangent here. But I think one of the things that makes Lewis Hamilton a great fit moving into Formula One in 2025 is he's much bigger than Formula One and motorsport. Like, he is a walking fashion icon. He's a musician. He's all these things that can take place and he can be an ambassador for off the track, but that's a whole other episode we'll talk about there. But I think, again, I'm looking at, ironically, this popped up right before we started, and I wanted to find a place to bring this in, and I feel like I can here. These corporations, car companies or sneaker companies, again, it feels like they'll jump on board and get in bed with influencers, celebrities, et cetera, when it's cool and when it helps them. And then the moment they feel that the tide has turned, they're very quick to throw a lawsuit, et cetera. But I'm looking at an email that I got for the Luca 3 photo finish that dropped today. And in the background is, I'm guessing, one of Luca's cars, because he's a big car guy, is a black Buick Grand National, probably a GNX, it looks like. So it's like, okay, my question's here, and I don't know the answer to this, but like, Buick is now a defunct company, but General Motors still owns that IP, right? Did they get permission to photograph Luca in front of a black Grand National? Because there's no reference to what that car is there. They're not paying homage to this silhouette belongs to General Motors, blah, 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 blah. But we're going to look at that, and you're going to call it the photo finish, and you're going to incite speed with putting, one of the fastest American cars of the 80s and one of the most iconic silhouettes of the 80s out there. Again, it feels a little like, okay, how's this going to benefit me? But, that's not going to benefit me. So no, here you go, lawsuit. It doesn't sit right with me,
So that brings up something really interesting because now that I think about that, like the reason why a lot of people go to Dom is because he's able to put together IP that necessarily Nike couldn't do on their own. They couldn't do as a custom sneaker. Like, if you want a Louis Vuitton sneaker, a Louis Vuitton Jordan 1, Dom could get you a Nike shoe, get the Nike, the Louis Vuitton purse, a Louis Vuitton bag, and convert that into the panel so they can make the Jordan 1. Now, Nike and I'll say other brands as well, they do these homages to sneakers like kind of under the table because they can't necessarily get approval. So they'll do a colorway that looks very much like a Gucci colorway, but it won't technically be Gucci. It's just slightly different, but it looks very close to it. So for them to take issue with some of this stuff is a little bit hypocritical. And now that like thinking of it through that lens, like right next to Nick is like, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, I got some good stuff for you.
Oh man.
So I think we should probably talk about Nike SB Dunks, right? Like Heineken Dunks are not a Heineken collaboration. You know, like we could go through a list of hundreds of Dunks, and I love
Jacques' favorite, the Oreos, right? Did they collaborate with Nabisco on that? I don't think they did.
It's not. So I pulled this shoe out to show you guys too. This is a shoe from 2013. It's obviously, you know,
Reebok
Eric's looking at this and going, it's a Ferrari. Right?
Yeah.
Like this is a Ferrari F1 pack. It's carbon fiber.
Yep.
You know, like upper. This is just an F1 pack. It's very generic. 2013 came with a couple other colorways, which I'll show, you know, in the video. But this colorway is not a collaboration between Reebok and so the Reebok Pump Fury and Ferrari, right? Like they didn't have a deal with Ferrari at that time. At that time, the only deal that Ferrari had with a footwear company was with Puma, and they only made basically like speed cats, you know, like, which is a shoe that's retroing right now, crazily enough.
Yeah.
That is also the other workaround that all these brands do. Like, I don't fault the sneaker brands for doing that in any way, shape, or form, because I have so many things that I'm passionate about that I would love to create colorways and storylines and be like, hey, the person that sees this, you know, is going to recognize it and be like, oh my God, that shoe is because he's wearing that other t-shirt that, you know, whatever it is. Like that happens all the time. That's the way people think. They want to combine their passions. We have a Cars and Kicks podcast because we all love these two things that don't, they mesh, but they haven't enough for us. So we're like, let's put these more together.
Yeah.
I think that's the craziest part about it is like, you have this, there's so many unspoken things that happen. And then it's all of a sudden like, oh, now there's a lawsuit. And that's what brings a bunch more attention to it. And I think like the other part of that, you know, that I wanted to like kind of talk about is this happens way outside of Cars and Kicks. This happens in so many different worlds where, to your point, you know, like Nabisco Oreos never happened. But Dom has made Pizza Hut trainers for Pizza Hut, you know, or I forget the model.
The Pie Tops.
Yeah, like the Pie Tops, right? I have a friend that does, you know, Blake, that does a podcast called The Deep Track. He just talks about watches and connects a lot of stories that, you know, he's a big sneaker guy, big into cars. We'll eventually have him on the podcast, I'm sure. But he recently talked to George Bamford. So if you don't know, Bamford Watches for years just did really high-end custom watches. And eventually they got to the point where, you know, I think Tag or Zenith hired them to like actually create collaborative watches. So like it's the same situation in a different world. And I'm sure like these are just the worlds that I pay attention to, but I'm sure this exact same thing happens on so many different levels across the world that why are we still like, I just like, I think my knee jerk reaction to this whole lawsuit is like, why are we still doing this? You know, like it's one thing if Dom sneakers are sitting in a Foot Locker or a Finish Line and people are buying them. It's completely different if he's selling on his website and has built a successful business. I feel like you're just a hater at this point if you're suing somebody that's done that.
Yeah.
I think part of it it's a successful business. Obviously Dom has grown exponentially. And like he has a massive operation, but that also comes with, you know, him being the number one guy in the space. Like he can't do it. There's no way he could do what he's doing and do it all on his own. Like he has designers that are working with people, like people calling him that are getting these commissions. Like he can't design every one of those shoes on his own. He has a whole team that's helping put that stuff together and people helping to craft the shoes and things. Like it's just impossible for him to do all of those things on his own. And, you know, and I guess we should also just to backtrack a little bit, like we're not against companies protecting their IP. You should
for sure,
very
for
much.
sure.
They should very much protect their brand and very much protect their company, their IP, their company intellectual property. And with there being like fakes in the market and being able to distinguish between a fake and a real shoe. I think the pricing difference with Dom definitely takes him out of that category. No one in their right mind. Let me see. I'm just going to go to
they're
Dom's
not cross-shopping one of the shoes.
They're not cross-shopping. No
Ones
one's going to Adidas looking for a shoe surgeon made Samba that's $2,000.
Right.
No one's buying a pair of Sambas for $2,000, or no one's buying a Jordan 1. Where's this Jordan? He has these Jordan 1s that he's made. Or maybe he doesn't. Actually, he might have taken them all down off his website now just because of everything that's going on. But there's no way like they're buying these shoes at those prices. Like these shoes are $2, $3, $4, $5, sometimes $10,000.
Yeah. There's
no way that they're mistaking that with Nike's product.
I think
so.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I 100% agree, and I think the issue with this to me at like the lowest level is Nike taking offense to the timing of when they're doing this. Right, like you wait until somebody gets to a certain level of success. We just recently saw it in the sneaker world. Nike sued Bape in 2023 over.
I was going to throw that in there. Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, Bape has been basically like they literally were called the original fake by Cause. Like that whole thing started in, I don't know when they first used that terminology, but his brand was original fake, basically pointing to making fun of the whole situation.
Mm-hmm.
But Bape started in what, 90 in the late 90s or like probably 99 if I remember right. 23 years. They made essentially fake Air Force Ones.
Yeah.
Almost, like exactly the way most of these Instagram customizers have done over the past few years, where it's just changed one thing on the sole and changed the swoosh into a different creation. They settled that like just a month or two ago.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously it's not a big deal for them. But like, why wait 23, 24 years to do that when Bape's been making these shoes and had moments of cultural moments that I think actually outdid Nike at many, many times.
Huge. Yeah. I mean, wasn't it like, I mean, one of the ones that stands out, I think it was the Neptunes and Pharrell. They made those like almost household name at a certain point where it used to just be kind of if you were a sneakerhead, you knew what Bapes and Bapestas were and everything like that. And then it just was everywhere. And, again, that's why I feel like a lot of this stuff is simply for the headlines, for the buzz, it's in a weird way, it's a relatively cheap form of getting a lot of press. And that's just speculation. I don't want us to get sued by Nike here for defamation of whatever. But
I wonder if I think with all the suits that are going on, I wonder if they had to file this suit kind of thing, where like they're suing all of these other people. They also have to kind of go after Dom as well. So that it doesn't feel like he's above the quote unquote above the law, so to speak. So they have to file this suit against him as well. And, things will settle out because everything else is kind of settled out. John Geiger's situation settled out. Cool Kai, all these other guys on Instagram, like guys that have done stuff. All those suits have kind of settled out. And Dom was like the one last remaining kind of piece to the puzzle, so to speak. I guess top of the pyramid, so to speak. And I feel like this was kind of building up. It was like, all right, we got to sue Dom as well. Even if it never turns into anything, it's like they had to kind of come after him in order so that there's doesn't feel like there's any preferential treatment going on.
So does this mean there's just a whataboutism with lawsuits where somebody gets sued and they say, what about that other guy that gets away with this? Is that why Nike's doing this?
I think there is. I think that I'm not, I don't know behind the scenes, but I think there is. I think you feel like they have to, like, especially because of how high profile Dom is. Yeah. And especially the sort of, the kind of deals that he's doing deals with Bentley. You know what I mean? Like your average sneaker customizer dude isn't doing deals with Bentley. he's at such a high level that, I'm sure the lawyers felt like, okay, no one can go unscathed. If we're going to go after some of these guys, we need to go after everybody. And Dom is part of that everybody, even if at the end of the day, he kind of escapes unscathed. And maybe he has to put, in addition to that, you're buying a service, he also has to have that Singer like
reimagined whatever. Yeah.
Reimagine resto. It's almost like Dom's making resto mods, in a sense.
It's true.
With sneakers that he's buying. And so maybe it's like that same sort of thing. He has to really say, make it clear on every single page. Cause like I was looking at the Singer website, like on for all their automotive stuff, like that disclaimer is at the bottom.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what the solution is. And, the mass production is, maybe that's the stickler. Maybe it's like, all right, you have one, you can do it as an individual, but you can't do it as a quote unquote business. But stopping a business from selling a service is not something that I don't think you can necessarily do. Because if this was somebody customizing Louis Vuitton jackets that people brought in, there wouldn't be a problem with it,
right.
I don't think.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's, again, you can go down a rabbit hole. Like if I used to take Sharpies and change the color of the swoosh on my shoes and everything like that. Okay. So theoretically, if I started doing that and throwing them on Facebook Marketplace, am I now getting slapped with a lawsuit? Technically, maybe so. But at the end of the day, I purchased the shoe. That's what Nike's purpose is to design, to create, and then to sell their product. Once they've sold the product, if I'm going and saying, I've done an official Nike collab, yeah, I'm getting sued. If I'm going and saying, hey, here's my take on this iconic silhouette, why stifle my creativity? That's the way I look at it. But
I wonder if this is, this is a kind of a little bit of a tangent here. I wonder if brands are trying to approach this like how like a lot of tech companies and music companies approach like software and music, how you have a license to use it. But you don't own it.
It's a very interesting take. And honestly, there's probably some validity to that. I hadn't really thought of that, but it's a great way of, at the end of the day, look, taking nothing away from Nike and everything like that. Like the shoe surgeon wouldn't exist without Nike's success of these other shoes and everything like that. So if they want to be like, hey, do your thing, we encourage it, but we're going to need you're going to have to license this. You're going to have to I mean, I had not thought of that, but that is a very interesting little anecdote there. I like that, Jacques.
That could be an interesting way to do it. Like they have they grant licenses to customizers in a sense.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like that's just going to get too messy. It's gonna handcuff the creative, and that's definitely not what you want. Like, oh, you can't combine us with X, Y, and Z, and that's not the intent. That's not why Dom exists, and that's not why Dom is revered in the way that he is. Sure. Because him being able to create whatever it is if he wants to make a Jordan 1 out of a velour couch material, he can make it out of couch material.
You better watch out. Ashley Furniture might sue him for that velour.
The licensing is really interesting, but I don't see how we could go down that path as a humanity, because eventually, like, if that's the case, then like your YouTube videos, your content now becomes a part of that discussion, right? Because you're using the product in a very similar way. It's just that yours go on the shelf after you're done with it. You're not trying to resell them, but your income and so many people now comes from the creativity that they express with these products, right? Like whether it's YouTube or social or wherever. And I think like that's a beautiful thing, right? Like we know so many people that do exactly the stuff that Dom does. The creative output is eventually what gets them opportunities with these brands. And some of them are still designing shoes today, right? Like, Jason Petrie, who does the Nike LeBron line and has for, 15 years now, was, just a kid sending pictures into Soul Collector back in the day. And, that's the kind of thing that you need, is that creativity. So it's kind of an interesting, like, path choice that these lawsuits kind of imply to young creatives. Like, do you go down the path of doing it on your own, or do you go down the path of like, oh, I'm going to go work for the company and design product within the company? And I think that's kind of disappointing for me in a lot of ways because you know, like it's a tough path to go be a part of an infrastructure that, you know, even the best of them, Nike, as we've talked about many times and will for years, being the best, they get the best people because they're the best company. They have the best marketing they have for so many years. And every once in a while, somebody comes in and takes a little nick out of the armor, and takes a little bit of the shine from them. But ultimately, these creative people want to work for Nike because it's the top dog, you know. And I think that's the struggle is like now you're kind of planting seeds that like if you don't come with us, then we may come after you for doing something with our products.
For doing something. Yeah.
Well,
anyway,
this is a good sample of what y'all can expect on Cars and Kicks. Lots of deep dives into the culture, the products, the everything. So I like this episode. This was fun.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah. And I feel like we have a lot more to talk about.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for listening. We want to hear from you. What do you think about this suit between Nike and Dom? And if you're a car guy, what do you think about the Singer situation? Or well, I guess the Singer's kind of out of it now. Or if you're a watch guy, the Bamford watches situation. Kind of let us know your perspective on these things. And if you're a lawyer, anything said in this podcast we will not be held liable for, right. And this is all opinion based, and we want to make sure that we
love all the things that we mentioned. This is strictly our take.
This is strictly our take. These are hot takes, lawyers, not fact. Please do not use this in a court of law. But we appreciate you guys. Let us know in the comments what you think about the podcast. Let us know what you think about the situation. Hearing from you always makes this show so much better. With you guys and your input, you help feed us and give us things to talk about. And really, you can maybe change our minds and change our perspective on a couple things.
There you go.
Leave us some comments and let us know. You can find us online. Nick, what are the handles? Because I'm going to mess this up again.
carsxkicksshow on Instagram.
Yes.
carsxkicks everywhere else. One link in the description will get you to all of that in our personal accounts. So
there you go.
There you go. See, that's not why I'm here.
He's the professional.
The singing voice. Pretty face in the singing voice. It's the only reason I'm here. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. I'm Jacques Slade.
I'm Eric Valdez.
Nick Engvall. Catch you next time.
We'll see y'all.
See you next time.
Peace.
Peace.